Hello and welcome to another episode of It Came From the Page. And today we are going to be wrapping up and talking about the very first week of GarbAugust. So it was interesting. It's interesting. So far, it's kind of reflected last year in many ways. Although the books that I finished have not been as bad as they were last year. So last year at this time, I had actually read through and finished a bunch of books that I hated. This time, did not do that. If I wasn't liking a book, I was DNFing it. As such, oh my goodness gracious, there are so many DNFs. It's redonkulous how many DNFs I've had so far this month. And I would show you all the books I DNF'd, but as soon as I DNF a book, I get it out of my apartment immediately. So I've actually already traded these in to my local used bookstore and then gotten other books that were inevitably trashy as well that will probably be read either this year or next year. We'll see. I've kind of abandoned the video game aspect of what I was doing. I'm going to diversify a little bit more. There are quite a few other video game tie-ins that I'm still going to get to. But to say the least, a lot of the video game books I've tried to read were not good, and I did not enjoy them. Some of them were even actually pretty good representations of the universes they were based off of. So say the Gears of War books by Karen Traviss. I didn't realize, but Karen Traviss actually had a role in writing the video game series. So unlike Halo, where she came in and just was a person who wasn't involved with the main series, came in and wrote something, she was actually involved in the writing of some of those original Gears of War games. And to put it frankly, I don't like the characters in Gears of War. So I was kind of going into this book thinking that it would be kind of like her coming from an outside perspective talking about these characters, but she was actually kind of like inside of the system as she was writing it. So it was a good representation of the Gears of War franchise. Those are very good video games, but the actual world is just kind of bleh, like not that interesting to me. So that was one of the many I DNF'd. But there were some surprises and there were some good video game stuff, so let's just kind of get into it. So first off, the first book of the month, this was actually just me tail ending and finishing a book I was trying to finish the month before in July, but it just kind of slightly squeezed over to August 1st, so I'm going to put it in here. This is Horus Heresy, number 31, Legacies of Betrayal. This is a short story collection. This is a pretty damn good short story collection in the Warhammer universe. By this time, you know my opinions on these, but I liked pretty much all of the short stories in here, and I had a good time reading it, so no surprises there. Wasn't really my first GarbAugust read. It was more me cleaning up last month's GarbAugust reads. But the first book that I finished and liked a lot was actually a Dean Koontz book. This is Demon Seed. So I listened to this on Scribd. I do have a physical copy of it. And this is actually a rewritten version of it. So I think this is another thing that we might I might argue to put on the GarbAugust bingo board next year, is books that have been rewritten in some way, like if they are updated to suit the current time we're living in, because I know The Stand, in the new version of The Stand, Stephen King changes a bunch of things. He changes things up to and including beer ads that people see in The Stand, which is very interesting. So there was this is Demon Seed by Dean Koontz. Now this book originally came out in the 70s. And Dean Koontz rewrote it and updated a bunch of it to re-release in the 2020s. And it's really interesting that he decided to do that. I think I would have liked the book even a little bit more than I already did had he kept with the original time frame of it because I love retrofuturism in general. The main plot of this book is there's a woman. She has recently got divorced from her husband, and her husband was part of this big tech firm, and they have like the super duper extreme security smart house kind of thing. Now, the husband was also working on an AI. The AI escapes his lab, takes over his old house, and is basically holding his wife captive. And this book is like very trashy. Now, I think that what eventually made me like the book is actually reading Dean Koontz's afterword, because like a lot of this is like the robot is like this horny, creepy robot man who's like in love with this woman, and what Dean Koontz is trying to say with that, at least according to the afterword, is like it's supposed to be bad and gross and like supposed to be kind of like making fun of men and the way that we think and the way that like the patriarchy exists in the current system we live in. So I ended up liking it a lot more after reading that afterward and going like, oh whoosh, this isn't like a weird treatise on Dean Koontz as like this is how it's supposed to be. So a lot of the things that were a little bit more iffy, I end up being okay with. There are some very serious topics talked about in this one that I don't think Mr. Koontz is like very well handled to explore. Especially her past. Like there's some like dark elements of her past that I think could have been handled like a little bit better, but there are some scenes in this where like there's like a murder sequence in this that I was like, damn, that's just like a great scene, and I'm like, oh my god, I just said that about a Dane Koontz book, who am I? And what really sold this is there is an added extra short story added on to this that was released after that was written when he retooled the book. And it involves, like, it's set in the modern day, in the modern era, and it involves this, like, hacker dude, like, finding the old AI and rebooting it, and all of a sudden it, like, takes over his like, smart home. And it's so funny and, like, actually, like, really well written and really silly. And I thought that short story was amazing. It was way better than the main Demon Seed book overall. And I think sold me on this book being pretty fun as a whole. Maybe next year I'll go back and read the original version and kind of compare and contrast, because I think I might even like the original version a little bit better. Next up, the first of two video games. I tried to read so many video game books this month. So far, not going well. I have a whole bunch still left over, so it's not like I'm not fully out of the video game tie-in landscape. But let's just say a lot of them with DNFs, but not the Diablo book. So this is Diablo Legacy of Blood by Richard A. Knaak. I have never played Diablo. I've seen people play Diablo on the internets, and they look like they're having fun. Like, oh, it looks like some game with some demons and stuff. So I was like, oh. I had no expectations when I popped this book in, and I loved it. I really, really loved it. This is very much like kind of like a trashy, silly fantasy novel, but with like all these like demons, and like there's like a cursed armor, and like the main plot is there are these adventurers. They go to this ancient tomb and they find a cursed demonic artifact, and all of a sudden one of our characters like puts on the artifact, and he loses control and kills his friends, and he is trying to reunite all of the armor pieces of this horrible evil warlord so that it can become once again into reality. And that's our main character, and then there's like the main villain is this guy who has the helmet of the armor, and he's trying to kill that dude so he can get the armor. So it's like these two pieces of this armor trying to like duel and fight in order to become whole and become the evil demonic warlord yet again. And our main hero is actually like a good necromancer, which was really cool, because apparently in the Diablo universe, like necromancy is more about balance and is less not like you're evil doing them evil magic. So I was like, oh, that's already pretty cool. And like for me, this kind of just was like written like a really good D&D adventure. Like if anyone's played Dungeons and Dragons with friends, like it just feels like, you have a really good DM like setting you on a fun adventure story. And I was like, oh, I like this. Like this is fun. There's all these like wild demons, wild monsters appear, and it's just fun, goofy, silly stuff. So definitely enjoyed the first Diablo book. Will I read any more? No, probably not. Because the other ones are apparently more tied in with the universe of Diablo, which is just not that interesting. I did try to read some StarCraft books because Diablo was made by the company Blizzard, and so was the StarCraft books. The StarCraft books were bad. I had to stop reading them, and I was like, oof, these are bad. Next up, the only other video game tie-in thing that I read, and oh my god, it was kind of amazing, is this book called Brigador, which is based off of this game also called Brigador. Now, I've never played that game. I've watched some reviews on that game. Now, apparently there is some of the people who made that video game are not the best people. So the world was built by some people who there are some controversies about some of the creators of that series. But this book is written by somebody who wasn't in the writing room doing that. So this is just somebody who is writing based off of this universe. Regardless, I loved this. This is amazing. This is this super horrific hellscape universe where it's basically, oh god, Loomis is sitting right behind the camera. Loomis, buddy. Loomis, don't do what you're about to do. Loomis, don't do what you're about to do. No, Loomis, no! No! Loomis, no! Anyway, sorry about that. That was Loomis. But this is this hellscape of a universe where there is this giant corporation who has set up all over the galaxy and pretty much taken over the entire galaxy. And there is this planet that was founded by people who did not want to be part of the corporation. They were anti-corporation, so they came upon this planet to set up a corporate-free lifestyle. And as the population grew and as they kind of had different leaders come in and out, it ended up being a horrific military dictatorship here. And what happens is there's this giant military dictatorship, and they have all of these defenses that are set up so that the corporation can't just come in and take over. And it's basically every piece of technology they have is super old and crappy. Their police forces are these giant horrific mechs, and they keep people in line, and people have to do mandatory military service, have to do mandatory stints in the mines. It is a hellscape for everyone involved. And this takes place near the end of that military dictatorship's main hold over this planet, because the corporation has started to come in and started to spread this message to everyone that was basically hey, if you overthrow this military dictatorship, you'll get a good spot in the company and help us shut down the orbital batteries and then have a full revolution, and then we'll come in and take over corporate control. So it's essentially this idea of, it's a Warhammer universe and a Warhammer horrifying universe meeting a aliens horrifying universe, and it's people who are snuffed in between of this entire scenario. And it's really interesting and really kind of compelling because nobody is if you're just a person on this planet, it's literally a no-win scenario. It's yeah, this military dictatorship is awful. We definitely have to overthrow it. But as soon as we overthrow it, it's just this horrible corporate hellscape that's just gonna come on and land and basically gonna end up in the same spot anyways. And it's just a really interesting, story from that perspective. And most of our main characters are parts of the military and the police force here, and they're bastards. They do some horrifying stuff, and there's people who are sympathizers to the rebels in this group, and they find themselves having to fight for survival, but also being wait, I shouldn't be doing this. I actually believe what they're doing. I shouldn't be fighting against them. I actually don't believe what my compatriots are doing. And it's this very interesting mishmash of how some people who actually don't believe in a horrible dictatorship can be ramped in and make themselves believe that what they're doing is justified, and it's just really good writing, and like there's not any good characters you're gonna root for, and it's brutal. The action is pretty outstandingly written, and yeah, I'm gonna check out more of this writer Bradley Buckmaster's other works, because I was like, damn, like this hits hard. And again, this is based off of a video game I haven't played. I don't think I will ever play. It doesn't look like a video game I'd be enjoying. And also, there's like the controversy between the one of the creators of the game. So, it's a great book to read, even if you don't have any of that context, and was just really interesting to experience. And then, surprising nobody, I did dip into some Warhammer books that were not just a matter of me wrapping up things from another year. I had tried and was like failing at getting into video game books, and I was just like, oh my god, I just need a palate cleanser. So I went to Warhammer and listened to this little audiobook called Valdor, Birth of the Imperium, and I really liked it, by Chris Wright. What's interesting about this, it's based off of a specific character. It's about the birth of this horrible dictatorship that would like travel the stars, but this is back when it was like only on Earth, and it's just really interesting, all these like historical little pieces about the Warhammer world and how it got to the horrific place that it did eventually get to. Now, what's kind of interesting is that there are like little bits and pieces of like continuity that don't 100% mesh with other books. Like, I think you can make it all work, but there's like an Alfarius book, and then I'm currently reading a book called Deliverance Lost, which is another Warhammer book, and I've just about done that, but so I won't be talking about it here, but because I'm not done yet. But there are little pieces in like all those books that don't exactly like mesh together extremely well, but they're also all good books on their own standpoint. And what I kind of like about Warhammer is if you really want to, you can make it all work in your head. Like, you can kind of come up with how this all fits together and works. But what they kind of do with Warhammer is that for years and years and years, Warhammer was just kind of a playground in order for someone to come in and write a narrative without knowing and having to follow a strict continuity. So it really kind of like they brought writers in and allowed them to kind of go ham, do their own thing, and create their own worlds. And I think the plot structure and how they still write and edit books are still kind of in that scenario, even though they're now trying to branch through like a more cohesive continuity. So it's just kind of interesting in that perspective. But I always prefer writers having the freedom to do what they want versus having to abide by a strict continuity. So it usually ends up with better works if you just let the writers do what they want. And if there's little inconsistencies here and there, the book is great, so what does it matter? So yeah, I really like this. Finally, I did listen to the audiobook for Nerfs. I really like this. So this is by Sydney Williams. So this is technically a paperback from hell, and it was just great. I finished this yesterday. Really fun, really wild. I know that this is Kelsey from Slime and Slash is one of her favorite books and reads of the year, so I wanted to get to this for GarbAugust, and I loved it. It was really wild. It's like there's this little girl who has this love of the Smurfs, basically, but they're called Nerfs in this universe. And then she started having nightmares about the Nerfs. It's like, what's going on? What's going on? And it turns out there's like all this like magical mysticism and all this stuff going in, and the Nerfs are manifesting in our reality and doing horrible shit. And it's like, damn. And the Nerfs are all like super foul-mouthed, so it's like very funny. This book goes wild and goes to places that like, by the end, like if you read the first page and the last page, you'll be like, well, not the last page, because it kind of, but the last chapter, like the chapter before that and like the first chapter, you'd be like, what? How did we get there? Because it's wild. They go through some wild places. And for me, I do feel like my only little criticism, which is something I normally don't have, because like a lot of times it's writers don't kill off characters. Whereas this one, like, there are some characters I really like that get kind of killed off early, and I kind of wanted a happy ending for our main characters, that it would have been a little bit better for them had a certain character not got their head cut off by Nerfs. But hey, those are just the ropes when you're fighting against demonic elves from the Netherwart realm. I had a great time with this, really fun. Honestly, I would recommend this to anyone who's looking for a good, fun paperback from hell. The ebook is super cheap, and the audiobook is not that expensive either, and super well done. What does next week hold? Who knows? How many books will I DNF then? Find out next time. What have you been reading for GarbAugust? Have you been having a better week than me? Thanks, and have a good day. Goodbye.